nature immersion, meditation, chanting, prayer, mindfulness. These are all research proven to boost our creative flow. And it's important to incorporate those into our daily lives, however small, even if it's a 5 minute in the morning, 5 minute in the evening, a break at lunchtime or something moment. And even just beyond those scientific impacts of regulating the nervous system, helping us calm ourselves, getting that cortisol and anxiety kind of resolved. I think it's because these practices, again, lead us to attune to our inner soul, our inner voice. And that is that connecting thread, not just to our own voice, but once we connect to our own voice, these spiritual and creative practices connect us to each other and to the universal experience.
What if your creativity could become an endless, sustainable resource, fueling every part of your life, even through burnout or transition? Welcome to the Masters of Wellness podcast, where we bridge Eastern wisdom and Western science for global wellness innovation. I'm Edward Curtin, joined by co-hosts Chuck and Carrie. We've spent decades helping leaders, investors, and wellness professionals create real transformation. Today's episode is all about unlocking creative flow for inspired living. You'll leave with actionable tools to nurture your creativity and practical ways to live more authentically. Joining us is Jenny Leigh Hodgins, creative empowerment coach, author, poet, and host of her own podcast, The Creative Chord. With over 30 years in music and nearly 4 decades as a practicing Buddhist, Jenny helps people reconnect with their creative potential.
Welcome to the Masters of Wellness podcast, your ultimate path to holistic health, wellness, and success. Discover the powerful fusion of Eastern wisdom and Western science, designed to balance your mind, body, and spirit. Our channel brings you holistic wellness practices, effective strategies to boost productivity, and insights on stress reduction and active aging. Join our global community and transform your life with holistic wellness. Cheers to a healthier, happier you.
Chuck, when you think of creative flow in your life, what comes to mind for you?
Quiet places where I have no distractions and I can find inspiration in my brain and just flow.
How about you, Carrie?
I think of the right brain and opening a channel to the divine, to all the information that exists and allowing it to flow through that right brain.
Absolutely.
What she said.
And for me, when I saw the Jenny's background and what we were going to be talking about today, I especially went out and bought a special new shirt. Lee Xiaolong, Bruce Lee, he talks about
Nice.
energy flow, right? So this is my shirt for inspiration for our episode today.
Nice.
So Jenny, tell us about you.
Gosh, how I got started. Well, as a child, I was introduced to piano through group lessons, and I immediately fell in love with the symmetry of patterns and harmony. The backdrop is I'm a middle child enabler coming up from a very dysfunctional family full of toxic behaviors like narcissism, alcoholism, alcohol abuse, and music was kind of a beautiful oasis away from that chaos, basically. And I mentioned to you, before we started that it became a way for me to express my feelings and respond to my environment in that way. And so as I got older, I just kept getting further and further into music. I ended up studying music and studying it in college. And then I ended up gigging as a pianist or as a singer-songwriter and teaching piano in multiple facilities privately in public schools for 30 years. I ended up leading choruses, 80-member choruses, leading Relay for Life things for, to support the battle against cancer with elementary school choruses where I took their lyrics and created songs and they would perform those for those events. And I did, arts community choruses with adults and led arts groups, as a SGI Buddhist for many years and just continued composing for films, for musical theater, for piano and performing. Music has just become a part of my daily life. It's a part of how I address life and how I express my unique perspective in it.
You did mention earlier on that music was your way to express yourself when you were younger. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like how had that helped you and how do you believe that helps other people?
Oh my gosh. Well, how it helped me is it's a release. It's an expression of your unique voice, your unique response. It's a way to address and acknowledge and process and absorb your emotions, which is critical to, being able to navigate any kind of challenge, or much less a dysfunctional, chaotic background. And that helps me. It helps anybody that I've worked with or am working with. It's just I call it a portal to your greater self, your truest voice. And that's what I basically coach people on, how to get in touch with that. It helps tremendously.
The people that look for you and the people that tend to gravitate towards you and see you as someone that they would like to learn from, what are they presenting to you? Like what typical type of stresses or backgrounds or trauma or positives that people are coming to you with that they want help to express that creative side?
Excellent question. Basically a smorgasbord of people, whether they're teens to adults, whether they're piano students to adults really yearning to access creativity, to frustrated professional creatives, and almost everybody that comes to me needing encouragement, they start out believing either they're not talented, they're not gifted, or they're blocked in some way, or their ideas have kind of dried up or whatever. And backgrounds are from all over the place. It's just a universal kind of need to express, creatively, and they feel stuck, basically, if that explains. That's who I'm dealing with.
Okay. And you have coached many individuals and groups, as you said. Do you have some remarkable transformations that you have witnessed from people that have worked together with you, just as an example?
Well, basically, I've seen it over and over again, kind of the similar story that once each of these people learn to relax those judgments and they begin learning how to explore with curiosity without judgment and kind of get playful about experimenting and exploring and tuning in to themselves using self-compassionate practices and curiosity, they start to kind of lighten up. They start to feel a little lighter. Their confidence rises, their posture changes, their confidence starts to grow. I've seen them really awaken to the fact that they have an inherent creative voice, and they kind of have a eureka moment, like, oh yeah, I got this. I can do this. Just when they get back in touch with it, they realize that how they express that is the wonderful thing about being themselves uniquely. And so basically, when I've seen countless people really transform their ideas into be able to tap their ideas, their enthusiasm, and whether it's somebody who was really heavily struck with performance anxiety, getting to a point where she was actually eager and excited and kind of had a lot of pride in participating in performances and improving from one performance to the next without that anxiety, really feeling that confidence come kind of alive, within her. Many examples of different stages of things where, writers or, other performing artists that I've worked with have been kind of feeling blocked with their ideas or stumped and awakening again to refreshing that voice within them. And they start to revive their inspiration and go forward eagerly with, fresh ideas. It's an amazing transformation really to watch. It's a profound the bottom line is that they start to awaken to the fact that creativity is inherent in them and they have their own unique way to express that. And they've just forgotten how to access that or have forgotten to believe in that. And so as you know, I'm a Buddhist practitioner for 39 years. I'm an SGI Buddhist member. And the premise of my belief is that every person already possesses unlimited potential, creativity, and positive potential within them. So based on that premise, I just remind people of that. And through, practical exercises and things that we do with self-compassionate practices, creative practices, spiritual practices, whatever their needs are, they start to kind of awaken to that. And it just refreshes. And I want to go back to what Chuck said earlier, really struck me, that when you asked him what came to mind when he thought of creativity, he immediately went to quietness, stillness, to be able to really listen and be still and hear. And that is a huge part of my approach with creativity, because the creative process has an ebb and flow to it. And if we neglect the ebb part, you can only flow so much. Eventually that output kind of dries up. You have to nurture creativity. So that's what I've really helped people recognize sometimes when they're blocked. It's that they've, like myself, either have been through a heavy season and they're in burnout recovery. And we have to find ways to kind of train that and train ourselves to allow that stillness that Chuck mentioned earlier. And once you do that, creativity kind of revitalizes itself. It has to be nurtured. Yeah.
Wow. I have an important question.
Okay.
Do you go by Jenny or Jenny Leigh?
Either one.
Which is your preferred?
I usually go by Jenny Leigh. Yeah.
Okay, Jenny Leigh.
Thank you
Okay.
for asking that.
So Jenny Leigh, it's very interesting because so much of what you just spoke, which is actually profound. And it's so interesting because a month or two ago, we interviewed a world-renowned doctor or professor named Dr. Rao. And he speaks basically about what you're talking about, that you are the block and restriction that is blocking you, and that it's all about your perception and which judgments that are standing in the way. I'm summarizing. This is not how he speaks. This is the Carrie version. But that your judgments that are is what's blocking you. And so, for instance, one of the things that came to my mind when you were speaking,
Excuse me.
something I've said in so many yoga classes and in sound baths, I say this all the time. People have such a difficult time quieting their mind, and everybody says we have this monkey mind, and we've got to learn to take control. And so one of the things that I always say is there is no right or wrong, there is no good or bad. Only your judgments. Lay aside your judgments and just be here now. Explore what is, right? And so it sounds like this is such a universal human disposition. That another one coming to my mind, I think it might have been Teddy Roosevelt, that said, comparison is the thief of joy. All of these judgments that we're bringing, and we come to somebody like Jenny Leigh and we say, I'm the worst of all these problems and I can't perform and I'm not inspired. And Jenny Leigh goes, actually, what you are is, you are the one standing in your own way. And all we need to do is work on the inner stuff and the
Right.
psychological blocks and restrictions, and bam, we have all that original vital force, divine energy flowing through that will innately inspire you, but just get out of the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did not pay Carrie to say that. That is exactly right.
It's brilliant. And I'm sure that you have serviced in just tremendous ways so many people, because they come and they think that they have a musical issue or a voice issue or a stage fright issue. And I can tell you that as a hypnotherapist, people come that, can you hypnotize me to stop smoking? No, but would you like to find the root issue of why you're doing it? And then you'll stop. And so they're coming to you for what they think is musical, and they find out that actually it's quite spiritual and emotional. There's four dimensional stuff, fifth dimensional stuff going on here. And wow, I'm just blown away, Jenny Leigh.
Well, don't be blown away. You're walking that walk yourself. That's exactly it. And what you're expressing is exactly what I coach. It's doing that inner work, having that dialogue with yourself, finding out, like you do with your hypnotherapy, what is the root problem? It has nothing to do with talent or being gifted or having a block, a writer's block or whatever. No, it has to do with having a conversation with yourself and figuring out, what do we need to focus on? And it's about learning to protect and treasure the space or the moment when you're attuning to yourself, to your unique inner voice. And it's that practice of being attuned, with your inner voice or your oneself. It's the opposite of hustle culture. It's the opposite of productivity, being, it's more about being than doing. And, as I've heard a lot of you guys talk in your episodes, much more scientifically than I usually do, but from a performance and neuroscience standpoint, quality work and efficient progress as a creator are directly tied to recovery. And that, again, I'm going back to that stillness and that quiet that Chuck mentioned earlier, because what happens is, when we start practicing these mini breaks and this quietness and this stillness, it allows us to tap into our inner work and have that inner dialogue and hear ourselves. And that's where we find where we need to start and how we can overcome those blocks and move forward. So, and you're absolutely right. Once you do that, creativity replenishes itself. It regenerates on its own, as long as you're nurturing that.
Wow. You just actually spoke to what Edgar Casey practiced in his practice. He would do work with clients, or before he would even work with a client, he was famous for taking naps. He would have a question, lay down, let it flow, get back up, and people thought he was a creative genius. Some people thought he was a madman. He'd wake up from these naps and he'd go, aha, I have the answer. And in the door that would come the client, and it was just flowing through him because he took that time to quiet his mind and let the information
Yes.
flow through instead of the seeking. When you were speaking, I was thinking, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
That's Abraham Lincoln, I think. That's for
Yes.
sure.
See, there's
Yeah.
all these amazing
Yeah,
proverbs.
absolutely. Yeah.
Carrie, did you know the Edgar Casey Center is here in Virginia Beach?
Well, no, I didn't. But if I come visit you, Chuck, we'll head over there.
He's got a whole holistic center and library of all of his.
Wow.
I think we would probably call him like the grandfather of holistic medicine. Would you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was.
Yeah.
He did not even just holistic medicine. I mean, the, spiritual aspects, the psychological aspects, connecting spirit to this, something I personally believe in deeply. We're here to have a human experience. If we wanted to stay in spirit, we would have, but we chose to come and be a human. The most spiritual thing you can do on earth is to be human. And it's when we're disconnecting from that and we're just so focused on spirituality instead of realizing that, we got to connect that, harmonize that. Exactly. And again, that's what these wisdom cultures are teaching. They're teaching about the left brain and the right brain and how to harmonize them. And as we've talked about in previous podcasts, not to intercourse them. That's how we breed some really negative things, but to harmonize them and to bring that spirituality down into our life, being very grounded. And I think that Edgar Casey really was a master at bringing the spirit. I mean, he was using spirituality and channeling to heal people's physical issues, right? So he was a master of many things.
Yeah. Really connected the oneness of body and mind,
Yes.
kind of the beginnings of helping people recall that. I mean, it's in Eastern philosophies from the get-go, but really connecting it to the Western world, I think, is his impact from my
Yes.
perspective anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Jenny Leigh,
And-
speaking of Eastern influence, what led you to the Buddhism?
Well, like I said, I grew up in a kind of a chaotic environment, and I was raised Christian, and I didn't see any solutions to the angst of our family situation, our family dynamic. And so I just started seeking. And that's actually when I started reading a lot of things about different religions, different philosophies. I learned about Edward Casey and Zen and past life, kind of checking out your past life to kind of look more closely at your life. I mean, I just tried everything. And I moved to Florida and was introduced to the practice. And right away, just the act of chanting, which is the main basis of our practice, it's chanting a phrase, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And that phrase is basically a way to tap into our greater self, to kind of reconnect with that greater life state in ourselves. And right away, when I chanted that, I felt like I'd come home. It was the most, it was bizarre. I'm like, you walk in and I went to my first meeting. There were people chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It's like buzzing bees or something. I'm like, what am I doing? But when I chanted it, I literally felt like I'd come home. And when I started chanting about, overcoming issues like anxiety, or one of my first benefits was I just chanted not to feel ill, motion sickness on a flight. And I didn't. And just little things like that. And then started realizing that the philosophy itself, as I mentioned, is about respecting the dignity of every person's life, including my own, and really treasuring that. And it's just been such an anchor. It is an anchor and a grounding force. And I went to Japan for that reason. I wanted to see the roots of my religious background, my practice. And I really don't even consider Buddhism a religion it's more a practice and a philosophy. So I hope that answers that question, Chuck.
It did. Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Yeah. It's so profound. I can't do justice to it in a short conversation, but you can check out sgi-usa.org, and that'll kind of get you started on what it's all about.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's something that is a little bit surprising for me. You're probably the first person that I've met in USA that is a practicing Buddhist. Obviously, I'm exposed to it here very often. I've got temples close to my
Yes.
home, and I visited
Right.
many times. And I see a lot of people that practice it very deeply, and then other people that respect it but don't necessarily
Right.
practice it. So
Like
that's
any religion.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's right. But it is interesting, and it is really beautiful that the Buddhist spirituality and religion is a wonderful thing. That a lot of the principles and philosophies are really, really amazing. But how does that spirituality and the creativity of your music background sort of blend together? You've obviously created something that is quite unique. How does that work, and what are some of the benefits that you've seen come from that?
Right. Well, like I said, for myself, it anchors me, it grounds me in the thinking of cause and effect. And I want to make the most positive causes in my daily life. So the first thing I want to do is raise my life state so I can respond to my day with wisdom and compassion and confidence. And if I'm facing a problem, using my practice to pull out my wisdom and courage to take the right action. And that never fails me, basically. In my coaching programs, well, I have digital products and I have a main coaching program, creative empowerment coaching program. And of course, I incorporate sharing my Buddhist practice concepts in my podcast and in my content and with my clients, but I allow people to practice whatever spiritual practice they want to. And, with regard to clients specifically, like the digital products, my music, my poetry, my coaching is grounded in my Buddhist practice. It comes straight from, I center it on that. And because otherwise, if I set it on my skills or my ego, I'm not going to have as much of a positive impact, I think, heart to heart, human to human, life to life. So that's my guiding kind of anchor. So incorporating spiritual practices is something that I definitely advocate clients to do, and is, within the strategies that I base all of that on, because it's research backed and experientially backed, proven that spirituality, spiritual practices, mindfulness impact and boost creative flow. So, mindfulness, I teach some of these, throughout my courses and throughout my coaching, that it's about being in the moment, being in the present moment fully, trying not to think ahead, trying not to worry about what happened or what is going to happen, but just being present. It's being mindful itself is just, as you know, a really solid practice that helps people bring out the best of ourselves into the situation. So,
Mm.
the spiritual and the creative practices that I do really support each other because, like I said, nature is often a spiritual practice. I consider it a big spiritual practice of my own. Nature immersion, meditation, chanting, prayer, mindfulness, these are all research proven to boost our creative flow. And it's important to incorporate those into our daily lives, however small, even if it's a 5 minute in the morning, 5 minute in the evening, a break at lunchtime or something moment. And even just beyond those scientific impacts of regulating the nervous system, helping us calm ourselves and getting that cortisol and anxiety kind of resolved, I think it's because these practices, again, lead us to attune to our inner soul, our inner voice. And that is that connecting thread, not just to our own voice, but once we connect to our own voice, these spiritual and creative practices connect us to each other and to the universal experience. So it's not just connecting us to ourselves through a spiritual or a mindful practice, it's also connecting us to something much larger than ourselves simultaneously. And I think, honestly, as we're talking about different religions, I think that's the premise of most religions. It's to connect us human to human, to improve our world together, to improve peace. So when we practice spiritually, or we practice creatively in those things together and connecting with ourselves in that way, it enables us to connect with humanity. And it just, by doing that, that's where all those boosts to creative flow happen. It sparks all these positive, chemical changes in our bodies and neurological changes, mood boosts, things like that. Sorry,
Mm.
that was long.
Mm. Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
it is amazing. And Carrie, you have a saying, "Don't know what you can't experience," or something like that. What was that?
Yeah, it's that you can't know what you can only experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So,
the idea behind that is that we always want to know. We want to know answers. We want to know, how will it work? How will it work for me? How will things turn out? And that is not the human experience. That's something else completely. The human experience is until you know. I mean, somebody can tell you things till you're blue in the face. I mean, try telling a newly pregnant woman who is about to be first time mother, what exactly it will be like when she gives birth, when she holds that baby, when she struggles with breastfeeding, when she doesn't sleep. It sounds like fun and games. It sounds like it's just, something that's going to happen. And then you get in it. Oh my God. Nobody could have. Why didn't you tell me? We tried to tell you, but you couldn't hear it because the only way to know is to experience.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's like,
exactly, that's exactly the point I wanted you to make for my next question, because we have talked about, I guess,
excuse me.
the outcomes that happen when people are able to unlock their creative flow, and obviously we work with a professional person like you. But for the people that don't know that they've got creative blocks, what does that look like for them? So there may be people watching and listening the podcast, and you may now point out 3 or 4 or 5 things that they might think, yeah, that is me. And they may then realize, oh, maybe I am having a creative block. And it may not obviously present with how to write music and to write your first $1 million novel and things like that. It might present in how to be a better parent, or how to communicate better with people at work and things like that. So what are some examples of creative blocks that people do have?
Good question. I think it's so many different things. It can be moodiness, cranky, aggravated, irritated, exhausted, burned out,
Check, 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 check.
very overextended in every direction, focused fully on, again, productivity, checking off the to-do list, procrastinating something with, heaviness in their hearts. All of these things are symptoms of a lot of what's happening to everyone in our very busy society. With specifically to creativity, those are very clear creative blocks and very clear burnout symptoms that people, and I've gone through it myself. I'm walking the walk. I'm in burnout recovery myself, so I fully know. For example, my tendency is to overextend because I grew up as a middle child, appeasing people, and I've learned to stay in your lane, work within your capacity and stop the overextending at the expense of your wellness. And these are concepts that people that are suffering need to be reminded of, because they're in such a habitual mode to go, 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 that they're not checking in with themselves. So those are some of the symptoms that you're mentioning.
You keep swooping back around to this disconnection that we actually have with ourselves.
That's it.
And when we're disconnected from ourselves, then we're disconnected from others, and everything disseminates from that disconnection to self. And when we're in burnout, which I'm the queen of burnout, it's my middle name, or at least it was, because you get the lesson so many times and you get your
Recovering.
stuff together, right? But when you're in burnout, you're doing all of these things outside of yourself. You're running, you're pleasing, like you said, you're striving. Striving is a huge one, especially in America, trying to achieve. Back to that, comparison is the thief of joy. We compare ourselves to others. We have, what I said on the show before is, especially for women, you're the full-time mom, and you got to bring an income, and you got to have a smoking hot bod, and you got to be able to wear the yoga clothes, and when
Yeah.
is there that time for connection to self? And then we can't figure that out. We say, and I'm trying to be a musician, and
Right.
I have blocks. I need help.
Right. And yet we know that a creative outlet is going to help with that, but we feel blocked from it. And I think you hit the nail there. I'm sorry, guys, but I think it's true that women experience that. I know men experience it too, but I think women experience this inability to say no, an inability to not pile on more than anything. And we have to learn, because we're trained that way in a patriarchal society, we're supposed to serve others at the expense of ourselves. That's been kind of an ingrained habit. And rewriting that, I love hearing you on the podcast, Carrie, because you're often rewriting that that message to women is, and men alike, it's not that men don't experience this, because I saw you guys checking off the lists of some of those symptoms. But when we recognize this is not working, how we know that is because of the symptoms that we just described. We're irritated, we're exhausted, we're burnt out, we're resentful. We are blocked, from being able to make music or create art or move or whatever it is. When you have those symptoms, that's a red alert that you need to address the overextension. And that is something that I have in all my courses and books and my coaching, but it's also something I literally practice myself. You mentioned how Edward Casey took naps before. So yesterday I rested. Today I plan to take a nap, basically because when I'm interacting in a dialogue or as a guest on a podcast, I want to bring my best. I prepare my best for it. Plus I have my mom, my caregiving responsibility. She's got a surgery coming up, tomorrow. So I'm trying to pace my energy. And I've learned the hard way, because I'm in burnout recovery, that if you don't address this overextension and this tendency to just produce for the sake of being productive, if you don't address that, then first of all, you're burning out. You're not giving your best. So you've really got to learn, one of the basis of my coaching program, it's based on my inspirational bookmark trio. And it's primarily, we start with the reset framework, which is reset your energy and create a flow. And this is what I'm talking about. We talk about where are you needing to address this block? And it usually starts with energy management and learning how to stay in your lane, learning how to set boundaries, whether it's inner boundaries, personal boundaries, workflow boundaries, professional boundaries. We're not in a culture that negates those, and we have to retrain that. And I've learned from my own experience, and I'm still learning, that by incorporating mini breaks throughout my day, giving myself buffer time before and after a heavy build or a client work or an interview or whatever, if I build in the nap time or the rest or an afternoon walk in nature or just a little more of my chanting session, that rejuvenates me. Just those little buffers. And you can do it simply, like throughout the day, set an alarm on your Fitbit or your whatever, your gadget, for every hour. Just get up for a minute, stretch, breathe slowly, 10 deep breaths for a minute. Walk around a little bit and sit down. That short little break throughout the day does amazing things for our mental and physical and spiritual and especially creative recovery. So all of these things are needed. All of us need to practice these things. And this is kind of the crux of how I coach people. I always start with reset, before I go to what keys to nurture creativity, which is another section of my coaching program, and my creative exploration formula, which is just my roadmap to set aside your inner critic and learn how to tap into your own voice and be creative. And I start with reset and it's the most robust part of my coaching and all of my products about creative empowerment, because we need those reminders. We live in a very fast-paced world, and you really have to reset yourself with those, boundary setting habits, I think, and rest and stillness, all the things we've kind of touched on in this conversation.
Wow, Jenny Leigh, when you're saying that, I kind of have an inner smirk, because what I'm wondering is you said this is what you lead with in your practice. So the inner smirk is, what is people's response to you telling them that what they need to do is walk around every hour, take 10 breaths and relax and break up their day? How do people respond to that as the first step in this, unblockage therapy, if you will?
That smirk off your face. I'm just kidding. Well, when I say start there, what I'm saying is I start with the reset framework. First, I listen. Where are you having struggles? Then we go to, okay, here are some things that you can do. And the reset is literally 5 pillars for every letter, RESET. Regularly rest is the first thing we start with. How are you sleeping at night? How much sleep are you getting? And usually people aren't sleeping enough or regularly getting enough rest. So we start there. We start tweaking simple things like work on protecting your night routine, work on protecting your morning routine and getting some movement in the morning. Try to go to bed early every single night this week. You may not make it, but try to. Something really simple like that before I might introduce them to 1 minute every hour. Then the rest of it is, if you don't mind me saying, it's R is regularly rest. E is essentials only. We get too busy checking off lists and we're doing things that don't really matter, they're low ROI. And so really focusing on what is most essential, we have to break that down individually, where you are, what you're dealing with, whether it's professionally or in your personal life or socially or whatever, or even electronic habits and things like that can be cut out. So essentials only. S is a big one that I focus on with everybody. It's stay in your lane. It's about navigating boundaries, setting boundaries, navigating them, dealing with the backlash, maintaining them. And I'm still doing it myself, reeling myself back in and staying within my capacity. These are things that I start with everybody because pretty much everybody needs that, that are coming to me. And then the next E in reset is embrace what nurtures you. And that's different for everybody. For me, it's nature, chanting, chocolate, for example. And then the last one is T, team build for support and accountability. So when you put all of that together, it's reset. And no, I don't throw all the kitchen sink at them at once, but I start with these principles and we go where they need to be focused. And for example, team build for me, one of the simplest thing, of course, I have friends that I meet with and we hold each other accountable on different things. But I also have the most simple thing. I just bought a RoboVac and mop. Instead, I have a cat and I have a senior mom. I'm a caregiver. And instead of constantly sweeping and cleaning up and vacuuming, I program a RoboVac and mop, and it just goes and does it. So it's a supportive tool that I use. These are simple things that I introduce to people to kind of cut your load down and help you reset your energy. Hopefully that removed your smirk.
Well, yeah, because what I was wondering is if people feel that they've been given permission that they desperately need, because we had a guest, and maybe you guys remember, I'm forgetting who, but had mentioned that women say that they are hoping to get sick so that they could be
That hurts
hospitalized
my heart.
so they can stop.
So they can
And
rest.
so I'm wondering if when you're coming, because people want answers, like they have a health issue and they just want you to tell them what supplement. They don't want to hear that they need to sleep more and they need to do some fasting and that, right? They want an answer, and that's a very culturally American way of being. And so when they're coming and saying, "Hey, I'm blocked creatively," then you're saying, "Hey, actually, you need to rest. You need to do these things." Are people tending to say, "Hey, oh my gosh, thank you for the permission"? Or are they starting at the starting point is, "Wait, what?"
Usually they're so desperate for positive change, they're open to that. And if they're not open, they're not coachable, so they really have to come ready. But yeah, it is sometimes a kind of eye-opening moment for some of them, but some of them have the same attitude. I have a similar attitude that you do. I'm not really very dependent on the medical approach. I'm not sure if it was your podcast or someone else, but I heard recently, and I agree with it. A lot of our current medical system is really about emergency treatment, severe, scenarios, whereas wholeness, wellness is about these kinds of practices. And I think that, the people that I talk with, that I work with, they're open to that idea because they've tried everything else. They've tried all the pills.
Yes. Yeah, they often are coming to practitioners like us. In fact, always. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
the number one thing I hear
There you go.
is, "This is my last effort. I've tried everything." And somebody told me, I mean, I'll get phone calls where people say, "Somebody told me that I have all these issues and to call you and maybe you can help me figure out what to even do. I've tried everything." And you just say, just lay it on me and we'll find a way, because you haven't tried everything. You've tried everything that's mainstream, tried everything that was quick fixes and on all of these modern solutions. And here we're talking about, and we share a deep belief that my way of phrasing it is, I always say, think like an ancient. And Buddhism is an ancient
Yeah,
practice.
that's right.
And we just need to go back to that. Like, you're eating too much, you're separated from family, you're not connecting to the earth. Go chant, go stamp your feet around the fire. Think like an ancient, and you will find wholeness. You will reconnect to self, and also you will vibrationally align yourself. with other souls that are like you,
Right.
that are going to begin to be pulled into your life. And now we will have an entire holistic lifestyle and community. You talked about building a team. Yes, it includes things like robotics to help assist us in our day. That's true. That's very modern. It's not ancient at all. But we need support systems, other people that aren't questioning everything we're doing, that, you say, I do this practice, and they don't say, well, actually, you should go to a doctor and go to a hospital, and you should really have that checked out. Those are all negatively informing our system and our nervous system and our spirit, and it's an interference. So this whole think like an ancient brings everything back into what I think the actual medical term would be homeostasis.
And I like, especially what the episodes that I've heard of Mastery of Wellness, you guys seem to focus on a holistic approach to wellness. And I think what we have to recognize is that, as you touched on, that we're kind of getting away from oneness of body and mind and soul. And I think that has to do with the marketing that is shoved in our faces constantly in a techno-driven world. And so we have to recognize that it's marketing that is kind of leading us in a pattern of believing that these kind of somewhat inept strategies, they're not always like I said, the medical world is necessary for emergencies or, I don't know, like trauma induced things, that immediate concern type of physical or mental issues. But in general, that's the marketing that's kind of pushing us more towards just that one slant of medical or physical wellness. And rather, I like that your show shows a holistic and alternative, a kind of connection between spiritual, mental, physical, and the ancient practices, and wisdom embraces all of that. It's just going back to our roots as humans and getting kind of clearing our heads about the marketing, I think, is really important. And that's what part of my reset strategy starts with. Some of that. It depends on who the person is. If they're really immersed in technology, that's something you've got to set some boundaries from that. For example, one of the things I did, people might be shocked, that I do this, but I just took Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn completely off my iPhone. I just don't even look at it on my phone. If I need to do something, I will strategically go to my laptop and do it there, where I'm focused on a solid purpose. Simple things like that, I think people need to recognize, that the overextension of that marketing, that's moving us away from what you guys really teach on your podcast, which is embracing holistic, Eastern and Western approaches to your full wellness, not just one track. Let I pick up on it anyway.
Yeah, and there's so many endless ways. I mean, we really do. We have such diversity in guests
Yes,
and
you do.
experiences, and what it really boils down to is you got to get in where you fit in. And some people, you're going to say no to the technology or take Instagram off of your phone, and that's going to send them.
Right.
And you say, okay, well, there's a compromise. In my home, we use there's lots of them now. We use one that's called Block, I
Yep.
think, and you
Screen
tap your
time. Yep.
phone and
Yep.
it locks
Right.
you down.
So
So,
many hours.
they're
Yeah.
right for an hour or for 8 hours
Right.
until the time has been set. And so, you got to get in where you fit in. If, some people like me are incredibly adept at, drinking the bitter medicine, to all the urine therapies and things like that. Somebody else is going to say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to drink my pee. And I'm going to say, okay, but will you fast? Can you do water fasting? Because that also will induce autophagy.
Right.
So we got to get in where we fit in.
Right.
It's not one size fits all. And if it sends you into panic, then we first of all have some more work, but where can we actually find a place for you?
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Jenny Leigh,
Carrie, you're going back to some of the good old days there, the coffee treatments and the,
I was going to say coffee enemas.
Yep, and
the
urotherapy.
golden showers.
Yep, I'm more into it now than ever.
And actually, there's a couple of references there. Yeah, the episode talking about longevity was with Dr. Hossein Kiet. He was talking about that the medical industry is designed or should be designed for emergencies only, but we should be proactively looking after our health. And then Curry,
It was from your podcast.
Kiera Nicole was the lady that said she worked with a lady that said she was hoping that she'd get sick because then she'd have
Yes.
an opportunity to stop.
That was one of your
Yes.
guests on your episodes? That was one of your guests?
Yeah.
It was one of her clients, a
Okay.
guest's client, and she had actually mentioned that's not a one-off. That was one of her examples, but it was like we were shocked, and she said, "Oh, no, no, that's something I've heard multiple times."
Well, and the people that come to me, there's corporate people that are burned out. There are people in the medical industry, huge burnout scenario. Myself, with my education, public education background, huge background of burnout teachers. We really have to retrain our brains about the overextension and taking care of ourselves.
Chuck?
Jenny Leigh, I know we just met each other, but I have to say I am really proud of you. Again,
Oh my gosh, thank
I know we don't really know each other, but I hear your background and I sort of I picture you as quiet young lady who probably just drowned yourself in music.
Yeah.
And most folks that are doing that, they never really come out of that.
Yeah.
They're great. They're
Yeah.
amazing at their trade and their practice, but they sort of stay in their antisocial bubble, right?
Right.
And they get really,
That's a
really
risk.
good at that, and they're great when you open them up, but you've definitely exposed yourself in life to get to this weird place that you're at now, this beautiful place that you're at now, where somehow that passion for music and spirit that you've discovered has helped you discover that there's a different part of you that doesn't have anxiety, that actually likes
Right.
to work with people. And I just sort of picture it as we were having this episode, you meditating, you humming, and something coming to you that says, I need to start a podcast. I need to start. Like you've taken this sort of 180 and something has come to you. I'm wanting to go back a little bit if you could. This is a really good success story, I think, for many that might be listening, that they have
Thank you.
passions. Maybe they've found their niche, but they know they have other niches. How do they discover that? That's part of creativity.
Mm,
How do they discover
mm,
that there's other aspects of themselves that they
mm.
didn't know before? Maybe it's those
Right.
quiet times, maybe it's the meditation. But if you could, when you meditated in the past, when you've been humming in the past, did you sort of see all this happening? How did this all come to you?
Absolutely not. I did not see that coming. But thank you, first of all. That really, I'm going to keep that feather in my hat and, soothe my heart with that. That's really wonderful. What got me to this point is my Buddhist practice, because the premise of Buddhism is changing poison into medicine. And what you face in your life, what challenges and obstacles and problems and personal weaknesses that you have in your life, when we use Buddhism philosophy and the chanting of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, it enables us to turn it around, find solutions, believe in our greater potential. And Buddhism has been my guide that way. And a big part of our practice is practice for oneself and practice for others. And the point of that is really, understanding that your purpose is to challenge your problems, grow yourself personally so that you can encourage other people. That is the whole point of Buddhism, to show our human potential through our own actual proof. And that is why it led me to performing. I mean, I had severe performance anxiety. I overcame that through the practice of Buddhism with that basic tenet that what's the purpose of me being able to write music or poetry or lyrics or perform music if I can't encourage someone with it, if I can't touch someone else's life with it? So if I focus on me, which, I did for a long time, and it does happen with musicians and composers, I'm very introverted. I'm a highly sensitive person. Many musicians are, and you can get stuck there. But because of my Buddhist practice, I understand everything we have is a tool to connect us to other people, not just to connect to people, but to connect them to their greater potential through your own actual proof. So that is my driving factor. That is why I do what I do. And no matter what it is, whether it's publishing my books, publishing my poetry, teaching piano, providing courses on creative empowerment, coaching people in that, my podcast, my website, everything comes from how do I use who I am to inspire other people to use who they are and the best part of ourselves. So that is the answer to that. It's my Buddhist practice. It's my spiritual practice that helps me get there. I'm so grateful to that, because without Buddhism, I do have a tendency to be insular and egotistic and stuck in my own zone. So I'm very grateful to have a path to kind of polish my life that way. So I'm extremely encouraged that you mentioned that. It makes me feel like, all right, I'm starting to do it. People are noticing. Yay. So thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think your path is something, a trail for others to follow, because there's so many of us, no matter what that path is, right? We have a path, plenty of decisions that we make in life. And you made one, you said 39 years ago, that has really painted your future. And thankfully, you're giving back to others to help them find their path as well.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's my benefit, because every cause I make for someone else to encourage someone else brings me, a benefit. It boosts my mood. It brings me joy. So it's win-win. I'm not a martyr. In other words, I don't do it just for other people. I do it for, if I don't, that's part of my stay in your lane, the reset framework. I'm learning, if I don't feel like I can give my best, I stay in my lane until I'm rested or do whatever I need to raise my life state. Then when I do for others, it's sincerely for others, but I'm also benefiting from it, rather than what I used to do was burn myself to the core, doing for others at the expense of my wellness, at the expense of myself, and then starting to become resentful about that. That is, I don't want that. I want to create positively, because it brings me benefit too,
Yeah.
win-win
Simple
again.
as 5 meetings a day versus 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, usually, I'm sorry, would you repeat that? I didn't catch
I
that.
was just wondering if it was as simple as, all right, I don't want to put 10 meetings in my schedule per day.
Right.
That's overload. I'm gonna reduce that down to 3, and
Exactly.
I'll just
Yeah.
open up 3 slots on my schedule. Is it as simple as making that decision?
It definitely, that's part of it. And, scheduling when my best energy is, which is in the morning and the early afternoon, and not scheduling it after 3 o'clock, because I'm kind of a zombie, and keeping my life state up by maintaining my wellness routines, my spiritual routines, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Really, what do you
Thank you.
do for movement? You know?
Yeah.
What do you do for movement? Do you exercise? Do you do yoga? Talk to us about your practices there.
Yeah. Yeah, now I really have to learn from you guys and do more of that. But yes, because I work a lot virtually, I literally do about once an hour. I go run up the steps and come back, and I do yoga pretty much every night on my own. I do nature walks, about 30 minutes every morning usually, and I take my mom for 30-minute walk, sometimes hour excursions. She has a transport wheelchair, so she can walk some, and then I have to push her. She's had 2 back surgeries, 2 knee replacements. So she goes as far as she can, and then I push her, and we have beautiful parks right around us, so we just go to different parks. We just rotate 3 or 4 times a week. And that's my strength, because she's, like with water and books and things in her little bag. I'm going up and down Kentucky hills. It's about, 150 pounds or so, pushing. So I get my workout.
Nice. And again, that's think like an ancient. We used to chop wood, carry water,
Yeah.
and we just used our body. I think so often about women upper in age squatting down. Maybe Ed can even relate. He's always referring to the villages in China and how they are women squatting down right towards the earth, cleaning in
Water
the
in it.
river and preparing, and people would climb. We would twist. We did so many things,
Right.
and now we want to replace it with go to the gym and lift weights. No offense, Ed, but it does not perfectly mimic the human design and how we can use our body. I know Ed can speak to this maybe on another episode, but we're working at a certain muscle, but it's like the reality is that muscle looks great, but in your everyday life, you're using all the muscles really around it, maybe more than that one. And so pushing your mother is ideal. Running up and down those stairs is ideal, right? Exactly. Building core, it's using your whole body. The yoga, it's working your bones, your muscles, training your body to be in a bone stack to give you all that length in your spine. I'm not sure how much like sitting and meditating you do in Buddhism. When you're
An
chanting, I
hour,
have to imagine,
about an hour. Yeah.
right? You're on a zafu or something on the floor, and we need the abdominal muscles, we need back muscles to stand up or to sit up
Right.
properly and do that and have all that length in the spine. And those things aren't coming from a gym. Those things are coming from using our human designed body for human things. So I think that's tremendous that you have your mother to push around.
I'll let her know.
Yeah. I'm sure she'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Though I
Yeah,
would like to be able to go to the gym and figure out the weight training, the weightlifting thing a little more and doing more of those machines. We do have a little gym, so, I might have to pay attention more to Ed, when he talks about how to use the gym.
yeah, I do agree with you that we went through a couple of decades of scientific advancement with exercise science, and then all of the machines came out that made it easier for people to go to the gym and be able to do the movements, but not so much in a functional way. So, for example, if you took two dumbbells and you lay down and you push the two dumbbells up for a chest press, it's quite a functional movement, and you're using a lot of stabilizing muscles. The weight is free to move. You need to control the weight. You need to be mindful. There's a lot of activity happening. But if you go to the gym and there's a chest press machine, you use the pins, you sit there and you just push the handles. But it's on a pre-designed track. That's the same track for everybody. But people's bodies are not the same, and everyone's got different arm lengths and different torso lengths and things like that. So that's where some of the disconnect is. But now there's more of a shift. A lot of fitness and wellness centers now are moving more towards the full body training and functional training, and like
I was going
pulling
to say that's where
ropes
your
and
personal trainer is really helpful.
yeah, that's right. Pulling ropes and pushing things. I was
Yes.
quite famous on the Gold Coast. I used to get people to push my car around the building at the end of their session. It was the final challenge. And
Whoa. I'm glad I'm
and
not there.
and yeah, but people used to love it.
You're already in training.
And I remember there was one time I had this young girl. She was maybe 17 years old. She was pretty fit. She was like athletic, and she was training to get into the ambos. She wanted to be an ambulance officer, so she had to be quite strong and quite fit. So she was this little tiny girl behind my car, pushing it along through the car park. And another lady rolled up in the car park to come into the wellness center. And she started abusing me. She's saying, "What the hell are you doing? You got this little girl pushing your car. You big meanie. You should get out and push the car for her." And I said, no, lady, this isn't my client. She loves it. And so we had to explain to her that this is like part of the experience.
Wow, oh my goodness.
I think there's a lot of lessons even in that story, that we can derive from that, maybe even through, the Buddhist lens and the judgment of the driver and their history and their own disposition and how they took and received that and what they think about, the world and other people. I mean, there's actually a lot there.
Yeah. But
I also want to segue.
Yeah, but I was a really considerate trainer. I would ask the client, "What's your favorite music?" And then I would blast that music full bore on my sound system
Beautiful.
while they're behind the car pushing it.
Beautiful. I was just going to say this focus on exercise and movement, getting back to it, it's in my Keys to Nurture Creativity's focus in my framework in my coaching program. Movement is a huge boost for creative flow. And I love how you can incorporate your favorite music, sometimes doing two different types of things, like listening to music or listening to other creators, process, or checking out other people's art or whatever. Those are ways to rejuvenate your own creative flow. And then you're pairing that with movement and training, listening to music, inspiring people with their favorite whatever and moving at the same time. Those are all ways that consistently, those are practices as well, practical things that are research proven to boost your creative flow, because getting that circulation and all of that, all those medical benefits, all those physical benefits will boost your mood, which enables that, creativity to kind of flow again. So that's a perfect way to exemplify that. You're using that as well.
Yeah. And Jenny Leigh, I don't really understand a lot about the science of music, but you spoke earlier about your love of percussion, that you like to beat things. I guess there's a rhythm to that, right? And then you also talked about chanting, like chanting some words when you go to spiritual practice. Can you talk a little bit about like that action, that the physical action of rhythm and humming, I guess, like the chanting, which creates a frequency in your body? A little bit about the scientific part of that. Like, what does that do physiologically and emotionally for us?
Well, I'm not nearly as scientific as Carrie is in her explanations of the biology and all of that. I just know and I've featured it on some of my episodes, I've researched it, and in the research it says that meditation, mindfulness, chanting, prayer, all of those things boost your creativity and creativity itself, like chanting a rhythm And I don't just bang things, I bang out the rhythm of things. Creating a rhythm is a kind of symmetry. It's a kind of harmony. And that expression of that, whether it's physically percussion, banging out rhythms, or playing something on an instrument, or moving when you're exercising to the rhythm of the music you're listening to, that's all scientifically research backed to boost your creative flow. All the details of the physiology of that, that's not really my forte, but I know from experience myself that even and all of this is research backed, that even singing, performing in a chorus, or when I was gigging as a singer or songwriter, or when I, write something, compose it, singing and making music itself, no matter what modality you use, whether it's rhythm or a piano or another instrument or using your voice, those lift your mood up. It literally gets all those chemicals moving in your body. It's a release. That's the way I understand it. And I have never, and that's partly why I think chanting has such an impact, because you're using your voice in a set rhythm, and you're also breathing in a symmetrical kind of rhythmic way. Those things help, reset your nervous system, regulate your nervous system. So again, I'm not the scientist as much as experientially based in what I see in my clients, myself, people I've encouraged over the years. When you're practicing a creative outlet, even from the very beginning of it, whether it's learning piano or joining a chorus or learning how to sing or getting back to an instrument that you haven't done or composing something, all of those things, when you're done with it, it is cathartic, it is therapeutic, it boosts your mood, it brings clarity. It just your brain processes all of that, and your emotions process it, and it's just wonderful. And going back to Carrie, I can just hear you saying that's the ancients, drumming, singing, all of that's part of the ancient
Yeah.
lifestyle. So I think it has something to do with our history, but also physiology. But for me, it's about, I've personally experienced it. I experience it when I sing or when I write or when I bang on a drum on the beach or whatever. It's just therapeutic. You should try it. Get you a little drum and go down to the beach and just bang a little rhythm. And if you don't know how to find a rhythm, put that music in your ear and just keep the beat to it. It's amazing, and you'll start getting into it.
Yeah.
Chuck's already there.
So you said a lot. Number one, you're right. This is ancient. Our DNA is going back so far, and we've inherited so many things that we're not unlocking inside. And when we connect with that, that is part of inherent, inbuilt healing process. And we do need to come back to these ancient ways. But what you're saying is, what we'll say in yoga often is, get out of the mind and into the body.
Yeah.
Even this word mindfulness,
Oh,
people
yeah.
don't know what that means, and they've
Right.
misunderstood it completely. It's actually not about being in the mind. It's much more about being very intentional. And so when you come and you sing and you know where you're going, especially with the chanting, these are memorized,
Right.
and it's on autopilot.
Yeah.
I speak about the Bible
Yeah.
often. And Jesus's wisdom, which I
Right.
consider him one of the great
Yes.
Eastern wisdom
Yeah.
teachers.
Yeah.
And he says, if your eye be single, your whole body be filled with light. Now he's talking about this single eye, but as within, so without. And there are so many layers of meaning to this. And he also says that essentially you'll reach enlightenment in the twinkling of an eye, meaning very, very quickly. Like you're saying, taking 1 minute every hour, for instance, and, people think this has to be long. People think that you need to sit down and meditate long term. Literally close your eyes, take 2 breaths and go inside. And when you have something like drumming or singing that's rhythmic, or chanting that you know where you're going, even if it was just stomping around a fire, you get out of the mind and into the body. And now that divine energy can flow through you, because you're not in the left brain anymore, where you are thinking. The left brain is about thinking and about logic, and the right brain is about channeling from the divine. And that is why the wisdom cultures teach what Jesus calls it, to be seated at the right hand of the Father, to cast your net to the right side. Wise men cast their nets, or wise men look east. It is all about that right brain. And in order to access it, we must stop thinking. So we get out of the mind and into the body. Exactly. And then when you tell somebody don't think or to meditate, and they think that that means to just sit, well, actually no, you're not. You are the practice there is to constantly sweep away thoughts.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing.
Right.
That's a thing you're doing. That is a single focus that you have that is keeping you in the perpetual present moment.
Yes, 100%. I want to say too that again is what I focus on in my reset framework. It's all about this embracing stillness, and I practice it myself. And being someone that is perpetually moving, perpetually doing, sitting still and relaxing has been a challenge for me. It is a challenge for me. And learning how to sit, I'm not talking about chanting necessarily, but just relaxing and sitting in stillness. I think it's hard sometimes for people to do that because they, or I'll speak for myself, I guess, we think that we have to fill that void because we're so used to overextending to fill the void. And learning how to sit with yourself, be mindfully present with yourself. And you can think, I'll think, wow, I'm really restless. It's really hard for me to relax. That's okay. Just breathe and keep being still. Just breathe and keep noticing what's around you. Practicing that simple little thing there, just being still for a few minutes and letting your thoughts go and just noticing them, that does wonders for putting yourself back in tune with your own voice. It decreases your anxiety and your stress, and it opens you up to that creative voice as you start to incorporate these as small practices throughout your day. And we're not talking about, you don't have to sit for an hour. You don't have to exercise for an hour. You start small. And that's the same thing for any creative modality. You're not going to learn to play the piano by practicing 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day from the get-go. You've got to start where you are and incrementally create small mini routines and get used to it and sit with it. And eventually that grows. And I'm sure, same thing applies for exercise, that sort of thing. You can't start climbing the mountain. You've got to start taking steps, first, right?
Jenny Leigh, let's get
Yes.
practical. You started to
Okay.
touch on some practice there, like guiding people through something. Can we maybe take 1 minute where the three of us will be silent and you talk us through a small practice?
I'll try my best here. So here are some top strategies that I use for, getting us in touch with and nurturing our creative flow. First of all, as I mentioned, using my reset framework, which is, from my inspirational bookmark trio, it's the main, pillar of my coaching program. Embracing regular rest, focus on essentials only, stay in your lane, embrace what nurtures you, and team build support. Those are really important things to start with. And then create boundaries to protect your energy. That's a big one. Protect your wellness through consistent routines, starting small, like we just said. Mark out creative time, schedule it in, and allow for recovery equally as output. Another point I would make is to, as we've talked about, incorporate reflection time for stillness, or what we call time on the shelf. Just, set yourself aside, daydream, journal, listen to music, take a nap. Even if you don't sleep, lay down for 20 minutes or take mindful walks without any agenda. These will restore your energy for your inspiration. You can also replace perfectionism and your self-criticism, which sometimes we're not even aware we're doing, or that inner critic. Replace that with curiosity and just playful exploration, and especially practice self-compassion in a rebuttal to that inner critic. And allow for mistakes as you move forward, because mistakes are just creative data that may take you in a new direction altogether, to a new idea. And lastly, I would say replenish yourself with inspiration, like read poetry, have a heart-to-heart conversation with someone, get outside and get awed by nature or by spirituality. Immerse yourself in nature, like taking a walk or just going and observing things or looking out the window, or explore somebody else's creative process, an art gallery, listening to music, reading a book, reading poetry, as I mentioned. These are all restorative practices that will help you physically, mentally, spiritually, and creatively.
You did mention poetry, and I know that you are a poet. Is there a particular poem that you feel willing to share with us?
I didn't think about that. I'm a poet and I know it. So I put all my poetry together and my lyrics in a book and published them in 2024.
We do want to share your links, your website, the book in your reset framework. Just give us a little bit of introduction for people. Where do they find you? And what can they expect when they first meet with you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for letting me share so openly and authentically. And for those listeners who are feeling burned out, or if you're creatively blocked, I've got a free burnout reset guide at yourcreativechord.com/burnout guide. And I've got a creative empowerment sampler at yourcreativechord.com/get inspired here. And those are just both really practical starting points to restore your energy and reconnect with your creative flow. And so I just grabbed a poem here, and it's more of a prose style, and I think it might really help people relate to getting in touch with their creative purpose, their creative voice. So it's called What Did I Build? And it's a reflection on my own journey, as Chuck asked me about earlier. What did I build? Wrote a new chapter, left old memories, broken pieces, unanswered questions, and the dark struggle of my life behind. Let it all go, floating away from me, like leaves on the wind, traveling light and far away. Started again with nothing but a prayer and a bit of relentlessness. Took quite a risk going this way. Alone once more on a path unknown. Cutting through doubt, weeds in my mind, with the persistence of a butterfly pounding against her chrysalis wall until it burst open wide. Jumped right into a new adventure, embracing the challenges with gusto and tenacity, pushing through mountains of obstacles in my face. Luckily, I had the grace of kindness from friends who supported me on my journey like an army of feisty ants teaming together to build their home. Made a new layer, a foundation beneath me, something to hold my dreams up while I continue to build step by step from the blueprint inside my heart. Piece by piece, each new place, a significant scene in my drama. Thread by thread, my tapestry grows. Each new color tells my story of endurance, discovery, and hope. What did I build? A life of strength, a heart of treasures, a beautiful song, a mind of faith. From now, I carve a bold new direction, expanding outward, touching lives within my scope, embracing soul to soul with this powerful light of vision as I fulfill my mission. That's from my kaleidoscope of.
I loved that, Jenny Leigh.
Thank you.
Yes, that was really beautiful and so relatable.
Well, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Suffering
is
is right. And that Buddhism teaches like that's not achievable, but transmuting how we see that and what we do with that. And I just feel that piece of poetry beautifully communicated that, yes, we've been through hard things, but look at the tapestry that was built. Look at the people I met and the connections and the lives I've touched.
Books. And thank you for that. And yes, suffering's part of life, but it's also the fuel for enlightenment, and it's the fuel for creativity. You can create value from your suffering. That's what builds our resilience, right? As long as we're not defeated in spirit. That's the right.
Yes, it's beautiful. Ed, I'm looking at Ed's face, and I think we're going to wrap it up soon, but I want to do a plug for Jenny Leigh. I have only just met her, but what she's speaking about with her reset, with her bookmarks, this is the reason we need coaches and mentors in our life. Is she can come on this podcast and she can tell you what the R and the E and the S and the E and the T mean. But when we go into our life and we want to integrate that is where the difficulties happen. We cannot always see ourselves clearly. We need coaches and mentors in our life that can tell us the tenets, and then we go into our life, we try to work with those, and we find obstacles. We come back to somebody like Jenny Leigh, who's so adept at this practice. It's hers. She's channeled this into these specifics that she draws from. And now what she can do is she can hold a mirror up to you and tell you back again things what you said you believe. How are these tenets being worked out in your life? What are you missing? Because again, you have your nose right up to it and you're not seeing it. So we can hear these things on podcasts all day long, but the actual implementation can be more challenging than we realize. And you just use the word, we can end up feeling defeated. And the T, y'all, the T in her system is that teamwork and team building, or she called it team
Right.
building, right?
Right.
And so she would be probably temporarily in your life part of the team that helps to hold a mirror up to you, not in judgment, but in love and actually non-judgment, and saying, hey, this is what the E meant. And we talked about that. And how did that go for you this week? And what tweaks can we make? And she can help you get out
Right.
of your mind, because the problems you are creating are always fourth dimensional. We are creating them with our thoughts and with our emotions. These are terrible places to be starting. But what we do almost universally is we think now we can use our mind, the very thing that got us in trouble, to get us out of the trouble. And that is why we need other people,
Right.
because we
Right.
will speak our mind to them and they will be bold and loving and willing to hold a mirror up to you and say, actually, this is what you're not seeing, and this is a new step you can take this week, and then we'll revisit it. So this kind of coaching that she's talking about, or mentoring, whatever words, ring somebody's bell, this is so important. And I think that Jenny Leigh is offering something so high quality and connecting it to this inner creativity and to the divine expression of ourself. And authenticity is the highest frequency ever recorded. And she brings authenticity and believes in authenticity and believes in that for you. And that is our highest calling, if it's the highest frequency, is to step into our authenticity so we can be the best version of ourselves for our own cup to be full. And as that cup overflows, to reach humanity and help to uplift others. So Jenny Leigh, I love you. And I'm so glad that we met today. And thank you so much for coming on our podcast and speaking all of these truths everybody needs to hear.
I cannot even respond. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Carrie is available for propaganda and marketing services.
Seriously, what a job.
Man, Carrie, that was gold. My God, I need you to do
Yeah.
something like that for
Yeah.
me.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Just being authentic, guys.
Absolutely.
Just being completely authentic.
Yes.
Chuck.
Yeah, I was waiting for the tee up, I guess. All right. So Jenny Leigh, excuse me.
It's
Wow.
okay.
I can't do you justice like Carrie did, but what I can say is what's in my heart, which is thank you for doing what you do. I think what you do is probably the most important thing. The title of today's episode sparked something in you, and then you realized that, oh, wow, I may not be a musician. I may not be an artist. I may not do something that is quote unquote creative, but wow, I realize I am a creator, and that is the human condition. My number one lesson is that we are all here to create. And the challenges that we all face have helped us create everything in history. Every single thing that we have in our lives are because there was a problem and someone created a solution. So I hope that we have listeners today that realize they don't need to be an artist, a musician, to realize that they can get a lot out of working with someone like you.
Chuck. Recently, we had an episode with another gentleman, Kurek Ashley, and he talked about the power of words and self-talk. And there is a common phrase that people say, I don't have a creative bone in my body. What do you say to people that say that?
That is incorrect. That is inaccurate. As Chuck just said, our birthright as human beings is creativity, creative expression. It's in our humanity, and you're just blocked from it. Just like, yes, there are amazing artists and musicians and dancers or choreographers that seem to be born just like children are, just completely attuned to that creative flow, and as if they don't have to make any effort towards it. And yes, there's an importance of developing skill and technique, but that is not what creativity is. Creativity is your authentic expression, your authentic view. Like Chuck alluded to, it's problem solving, it's tweaking a recipe, it's arranging your furniture, it's trying a new route somewhere, it's building the back end of your business in a cohesive way with messaging. I mean, there are so many different ways that we can problem solve and use that creative voice. And it's your birthright. It's in every human being. There is no such thing as, just those who are talented and gifted being creative. It is in every human being. It's just a matter of finding whatever's blocking you, learning how to listen to your true authentic voice with self-compassion and tapping into it and then expressing it. It's available and accessible in an unlimited abundance to everybody. In a nutshell, hogwash to that statement that I'm not talented. Everyone has creativity.
It's something that Carrie often says, that all of the information is already imprinted in us, right? It's just our job to awaken it. Is that right, Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, you have everything you need. And creativity, that is back to the comparison is the thief of joy. That we think that somebody that is here, their choice, their pre-chosen disposition in this life that they chose for themselves when they came here to sing or play music or dance. That's what they chose. But I can tell you, I'm a mother of teenagers, and while I've been a radical in my parenting, and maybe a lot of people think that I've been creative, I look just from my kids are teens now, and I look at what moms on the internet are coming up with today, how to strap your kid into the lawn chair by putting a t-shirt on the back, dad's t-shirt, and dropping the kid down in it. They won't go anywhere, how to feed them, how to play, all the kinds of games they're coming up with. I'm looking at these moms parenting these little ones just in 15 years from when I was having kids, going, oh my God, this is the most creative parenting time possibly in human history. This is not just about dance. We are all contributing with our creativity within our own field. Even Chuck might become, the most innovative insurance salesman, and can forge something new in the industry that has never existed because he allowed that creativity to flow, trusted it, and then took action. As he mentioned, we are creators and we have to take actions. Everything is based on taking actions. So if it flows through you, you've got to act on it. But it is certainly not limited to if you have a good voice or an ability to move your body and dance.
Yeah. I want to just chime in and say 100%, it's your authentic, it's who you are authentically. It's when you're expressing that. And even if it's a conversation, is highly creative. It's how you're listening, how you're responding in your unique way. Something that simple is highly creative. So I think we just really need to expand listeners' minds as to what is the definition of creativity? What is the definition of creative flow? It's just tuning into your real, true, authentic voice and expressing it authentically without regard to ego, without comparing yourself to others. It's about being yourself freely, period.
Today, we learned that creativity is for everyone. And with the right tools, we can all live more inspired, authentic lives. From Jenny's self-compassion insights to some of our myth-busting moments, there's so much to take away. If this episode sparked new ideas, please subscribe, rate, and share with the people that you love. Next week, we've got a really cool episode. A lady named Janet McConnell speaking about Unretired and Unstoppable, the challenge cure to aging strong. So we're looking forward to that one. Jenny Leigh, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today and getting to know you better. And I think all of us have really gained a lot. And likewise, our listeners and watchers across the globe and across the universe now have the opportunity to be able to learn from your wisdom. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.